It's with great pleasure and a lot of excitement that we welcome you all here today. We've heard about some of the great work you do as lawyers.
You're here because you either work with the LGBTI community, with drug users or sex workers.
Open Society Foundations is a global philanthropic organisation that works towards building vibrant and tolerant democracies. And the Law and Health Initiative works very closely with organisations and lawyers who are advocating for the rights of marginalised communities using a range of different legal strategies.
I do outreach work to agencies all over the area that I work in Melbourne. A lot of what I do, for me, that is very important, that there is a dignity and a way of going about things that says that you're a human who is worth listening to and whose rights are worth upholding.
We work with sex workers, drug users, LGBT people, HIV positive people, and also do a lot of work on access to treatment and intellectual property. We use litigation, legal aid and legal representation on the one hand, as also political advocacy and campaigning for law reform on the other. We've had some successes. In particular, the decriminalization of homosexuality in 2009 by an order of the Delhi High Court. More recently, we challenged the mandatory death penalty for drug offences in India. And although the court removed the mandatory portion, it kept the death penalty intact, and we've just filed an appeal against that order.
Of course, the drug offence involves a very large amount of drugs, so it's not that drug users will be sentenced to death, but nonetheless, people who trade in drugs would face that consequence. The work that we do is essentially based on certain basic principles, what we call human rights principles, or principles that we believe a rational, just, fair, civil society. When one gets rid of the death penalty, it's essentially saying that this society really values life. Similarly, for questions like sex workers being able to continue to do sex work, is essentially the principle of respecting autonomy and decision making, that people should be free to do what they want to do, what they choose to do.
We basically work with sex workers. We do training for the police, HIV and AIDS training for the police and sex workers. The police are responsible for violations of the sex workers' rights, especially in the night. They rough them up, they beat them up. Sometimes they seek their services and they don't pay them. We have trained policemen about human rights, and we begin from that point and tell them, look here, these are human beings. It could be your brother, it could be your sister, and you need to respect their rights. And they have been able to work together, and this has been a great success.
I was a magistrate and realized how much sex workers were suffering. So when I changed offices to become a lawyer, I decided I'm going to protect the sex workers.
We have given them dignity and we have taught them rights. If a sex worker can stand up to a policeman in Kenya and tell a policeman, you have arrested me, but Betty said this is not constitutional. Tell me the reasons why you have arrested me. Then I think I have done something for them. At the hospital, when they are discriminated against, they just need to take a phone and call me and say, there is a discrimination against us in this department, and I take it up with the hospital administrator. Members of the community, because I combine both harshness and friendliness, and because I don't fear the police, they call me AK-47.
We have roughly about 6,000 to 8,000 people in this part of the country who have a problematic relationship to drug use, and it is those people in particular that we are trying to reach with our legal aid, because one of the things about this population is that they are not able to use the same legal services as the rest of us.
It's due to the hard work of a lot of the lawyers at the Street Lawyers that we now can offer heroin treatment to the most vulnerable people who have not profited from methadone or other substitution medicines. We also now have a mobile safe injection room running around in Copenhagen.
It's 11 years ago, and it reminds me of a time when I spent more time working at street level and less time in the courtroom. And I'm handing out a rights card to the folks that are standing on the street corner.
We do strategic litigation, legal education, and law reform work. Strategic litigation is where you are working on a case where you're bringing a legal action, you're bringing something before the courts, but where the impact of that is beyond the individual you represent. It will create some type of social or systems shift for a broader community. We're working on a court challenge to the criminal laws that relate to adult prostitution, that criminalize sex work. We're working on a number of harm reduction cases, trying to kind of push the envelope on drug policy issues. Working from the Insight decision, the recent success around the supervised injection facility, drug users and their individual right to access that type of health service is now deemed to be a constitutionally entrenched right, which is incredible and opens the door for so many opportunities for future litigation to continue to push for more injection facilities, for more types of harm reduction services, for more types of treatment for drug users.
Here we see people from Georgia, from Ukraine, even from Uzbekistan, people here, of course from Russia. Many people die in that part of the world because of the war on drugs. I prefer call them partners to fight the nonsense, injustice, and daily violations of human rights. They do not really defend their rights because they know that ultimately they don't get anything in their life. For instance, obvious substitution treatment. For some people in Russia, it's really necessary right now, right here, and maybe in 2 years' time, these people won't survive.
My task is to empower civil society organizations, including the organizations which are representing drug users and drug users themselves, in order to be able to defend their rights. There are broad range of human rights violations in that countries, but the main ones would be the violations of the right to health because of the lack of access to the essential HIV prevention programs and drug treatment programs. Methadone is still illegal in Russia. It is clear for all people that lack of methadone is the direct cause of growing HIV infection. I think we would need at least 2 or 3 years before we will get some good results from the European Court, because on the national level, I wouldn't say that we have much of hope to actually really believe that national courts would be fair enough to recognize the rights of users to get substitution treatment and say right to get needle and syringe programs for HIV prevention.
We work in 10 countries in Southern Africa, and we support local lawyers and local civil society organizations to bring strategic litigation cases in domestic courts. If we do win this sex worker case around mandatory HIV testing in the courts, it's not just that sex workers can't be mandatorily tested for HIV. It means no one can be, right? You get dictators who try to get power by blaming everything on LGBTI persons. And I feel like our work, to some extent, pushes back against that.
This is the entrance to our offices, and the message is we welcome all persons who feel that their rights have been violated or who want to know about human rights. That is as far as we go in advertising the work that we do. We always have to look behind your back to see who's following you, to see who is basically checking on your work and what you do. So we don't advertise for our clients, we'll go out to our clients and reach out to them.
When I started Human Rights Awareness and Promotion Forum, our major focus was LGBTI, sex workers, and also people who are infected and affected by HIV/AIDS. I was inspired to do this work because I was also orphaned at a very young age, orphaned by HIV/AIDS, and so I know how it feels to be marginalized. We have one of the best constitutions, I would say, in Uganda that basically talks about human rights and respects the rights of everyone. Unfortunately, there was a recent insertion into the constitution which prohibits same-sex marriages, and that is in a way in line with the Penal Code, which has the colonial provision of unnatural offences, knowledge against the order of nature, which has been used to criminalize homosexuality in Uganda. It criminalizes being homosexual, it criminalizes being transgender, being intersex. Basically, all those groups are regarded as homosexuals. There are very few cases that have gone to conviction level. But despite this, despite it not being used in courts of law that much, this provision has been used to terrorize the LGBTI community in Uganda. For the offense to crystallize, they must find you engaged in a sexual act. Not simply being gay, not simply even identifying as gay qualifies you to be tried under that particular provision. But it has led to a lot of blackmail, it has led to a lot of mob justice, it has led to a lot of people being thrown away from homes, and also losing their jobs just because of their identities, just because of their sexualities. That does not arise from the law, but that's people's interpretation. Because they think the work that we do is illegal, we shall quake if they say, we are going to report you to the police that you're doing this and this work. I always tell them, just go ahead and do it. What we're doing is completely legal. A success that we had was the case of Kasha Jacqueline, Pepe Onzima, and David Kato. The judgment, I remember, was given out on the 3rd day of January 2011, and it was successful, and court was saying that, well, you cannot simply publish images of LGBTI people in the newspapers and then call upon them to be hanged.
The main organization in which I work is the Russian LGBT network.
One of the best results is our campaign against homophobic draft law in one of the Russian regions, and it was a bill about prohibition of propagandizing of homosexualism among minors.
This is a protest in support of criminal procedure against one human rights activist that was prosecuted about defamation and insult of authors of textbook, where she publicly criticized the text in this book, stating that what is stated in the book is discriminative against homosexuals. So we won this case, and based on this case, we put pressure on the Ministry of Education to withdraw these books with controversial content.
I always wanted to do something different, something that can make changes in the society, and maybe that's the reason how I got involved in this story.
When a sex worker's child completes university from the proceeds of sex work, that really inspires me, because the sex worker will come and appreciate and say, Betty, you made my child go to university.
Part of me gets a lot of energy from knowing that if I can alleviate some of the hurt and some of the pain and some of the issues, that I will feel better about myself.
Being lawyers that take on those issues and do that work sometimes means you're marginalized yourself, and yet I can't imagine doing anything else. It's the most rewarding work. We work with amazing clients.
The reasons are on your side. The law is on your side. And so that's a kind of power which drives your activities.
I find this work very stimulating. I find it intellectually very stimulating, and for me intellectual stimulation is a very important factor in what I do.
No matter how hard is this work, I will always recommend to young lawyers to get involved.
To get more lawyers and more advocates to join the cause for equality of everyone. So if they could somehow magically fall out of somewhere, and we have all lawyers basically doing the work that we do, and for me, I would be very happy about that.
If you want to be a lawyer, and you want to be a lawyer who actually brings some change into the society, you have to dedicate yourself, at least partially, to issues around marginalized communities.
Of course, the money is no good. But then, nothing compares to that passion, that fire that keeps you going, that tells you that, wow, this is the way to be.
First of all, take care of yourself before you take care of others, because it's quite a demanding job, and it can be very, very hard. Get out there and do this job already now, while you're at university. Volunteer with an NGO, and use your legal method, use your knowledge to help people who cannot help themselves.
When you're at law school, you're told about
commercial practice, going into a big company and representing big clients and making big money. But there's so much we can do with the law. As a lawyer, I think the options are limitless, and a lot of young people are not getting that opportunity. So one of the programs that we are designing is to get young law students in their third to final year of law school and start to expose them to this kind of work.
I went to my classes, but my education that I received in that context is nothing compared to the education I've received as an activist. I went to law school to become a better activist, and then my work in the downtown east side and my work with sex workers, with drug users and with marginalized communities and becoming part of that movement was the greatest gift I've ever received in terms of becoming what I hope I am, which is a compassionate human being.
I believe in what I do, and so long as that is there, I think I'll be able to continue.